All right, hello, I'm Blake Melton. I'm chair of Standing Boy Inc. And I want to explain real quick why during January and February we're unfortunately going to not have the trails open or not be able to have the trails open that much. Um, if you've been or watching any of the posts or following along, you've heard about the work days in drain and deberming. I'm going to touch on that really quickly and then get into what the problem is during January and February. So the trails are designed, they're rolling. They even when they're climbing or descending, they always kick back up. And that creates these drains or bottoms, with the drains being what's here in between the grade reversals. The idea is that those grade reversals keep water from running down the trail, they make water come off the trail. And for that reason, the trails built with a slight outslope. Now, obviously, the trail's made of dirt. So everybody's pretty much in the center of the tread. And so over time, it gets compressed. And there's this sort of burn that forms on the outer edge. And that prevents this from happening and creates problems. And so going through and deberming to one degree or another all these drains, depending on how problematic they seem to be, that's like changing the oil in your car. And we got to do that every year and then probably go back through and hit some of the more problematic ones another time or two during late winter, early spring. So this is what we're doing. You got water sitting on the trail here. You come in with a tool, you just shave away, reestablish the outslope, water goes off, and we don't end up with lots of ruts and problems. Um, when there's a drainage, meaning a very I should say better, where there's a very active drainage, it's going to look uphill like this, where you can see a lot of high flow of water, then those we generally need to armor. And armoring the drain looks something like that. All that is basic trail maintenance, and we do all that and we do it pretty well, but it doesn't solve the very late December to sort of early March issues because it doesn't solve the seeps. This is the bottom of Scramble Dog, and it's hard to see in the picture, but this entire stretch was soaking wet, and it gets wet every year. And if you look uphill, what you generally see is you see a lot of flat areas and you see grass. And here's the problem. We can build on the side of the slopes like we do. And what's supposed to happen is the water runs down the hill. It runs over our slightly outsloped trail and out the drains and down the hill. But when we have a lot of flat areas and we have all this grass, and we have a lot of flat areas because there's been a lot of human activity on that property. There are a lot of old road beds. There's a lot of skid tracks from logging. And if you get off trails and wander around, you'll see that. But what happens, the grass in these flat areas do the same thing, which is they hold the water on the hillside. So what happens is it soaks into the hillside rather than running down it. Well, the back slope to our trails, especially the soft back slope to our new trails, provides an excellent place for all this water that seeped into the hillside to come back out. And that's what a seep is. And that's why, I mean, the property is located next to a river and in a creek. So, I mean, it's a wet property to begin with. But this is the fundamental reason why it struggles so much during this time of year. This is an area on Scramble Dog that's immediately adjacent to that seep, and it's dry. Trail looks exactly the same, but what's different is uphill. There's no flatness and more slope. I don't know if this is going to work, but if you may not be able to hear that, but this is a very active seep on Tie Snake where you can literally, it's like nature left the hose on. A day or two after rain, it is flowing audibly out of the back slope and onto the trail. There's an exacerbating issue of that we have some areas of micaceous soil. And if you look, and it's a little hard to see in the pictures, but a lot of times, if you notice a bad rutted spot out there, the soil will have these little gold flecks in it, and it'll be kind of spongy. And those mica particles are very flat and slippery, and they swell when they get wet, and then they slide. So it's very hard to get compaction. And in those areas, a lot of times it's sort of the sort of bad combination is you get flatness, grassiness, and micaceous soil, and that trifecta is no good. Um, there also, I should say too, we have a lot of great rock. Part of the downside of that is some bedrock. Like if you think about the top of the bug is wetter and more of a problem than the bottom of the bug, which makes zero sense because normally, you get more watershed coming down. It should get wetter the further downhill you go. And we're pretty sure the reason it's so wet there is just bedrock and the water not being able to seep into the ground. Um, so how do we deal with seeps? We can try to focus them. We can try to, if it's seeping onto the trail and then down, we can try to go ahead and get it across the trail. We can try to create some low points and that get wet and some high points that get high. And if we can make it short, the seep focused and short, then we can armor it like a drain. And that's relatively easy. The problem is if we can't do that, and a whole bunch of times we can't, then you got to armor. And I'll talk about that in a second, but you can see like a lot of times you can find the seep in the back slope and you can dig out a small grade reversal and you can try to get the water across the trail. If you can't do that, then you got to do this. And you can see just how much rock it takes to armor a 20-foot long seep. And this is the bottom of the Polowa. And you can see the grassiness and the flatness. This is fine because it's a black trail and it's supposed to be chunky. But the problem with armoring, one, and I'll go back so we can look at this. One is, this obviously requires a lot of manpower, and there's not a lot of areas of the property, there's not that much rock just sort of lying around nearby. But even if we had unlimited resources, if we did this, it's going to interfere with the trail experience the 9 months or 9.5 months out of the year that is not necessary. Like the green trails, we don't want to create a whole bunch of rumble strip and chunk. And it's very hard to do this smoothly. It's not like there's just pallets of flagstone sitting out there. Even like you think about Lickety Split, we could do this and it's blue, so we don't have to worry about it being chunky. But we can't kill speed. We don't have that much elevation. So we're always trying to find speed in order for jumps or rock features or rock gardens. So we even on the blue and black trails, we don't want to kill speed in areas where it doesn't work well. And we've got some slow speed, chunky rock gardens, and they're great, but we want to be careful about how many of those we create. So that's the problem with trying to armor all this. And, I guess if you live in certain areas of England or Scotland, I suppose like this is your normal trail because they're all like this or in some areas. But we don't have to do that for 9 months out of the year. And the resources and the impact on the trail experience, it doesn't make sense to try to do this everywhere. So the unfortunate reality is we can never win the battle with the terracing, the grassiness, the water table, and the micaceous soil. So from late December until early March, the best thing that everyone can do is just sort of have this understanding and have realistic expectations about how much we can keep the multi-use trails open, that we may just need to close some of the gravity trails to avoid them getting too beat up, and to let us focus energy on other things. Be grateful when we get a stretch of good weather and we can get in some good riding. Hiking, the hiking only trails are going to solve a lot of this issue because they won't be closed as much. So we'll talk riding right now. And then the most important thing is to come to work days. We're not, we're not trying to make the trails great in January and February. What we're doing right now is setting the trails up to be good in late February and early March, and to be able for us to open up more quickly after rain in April and May. So it's not just, all this work isn't about trying to ride more in January and February. It's about how the trails are throughout the year. So I hope that helps everyone understand. There's some really wonderful things about that piece of property. How it handles January and February is not on that list. So I hope this helps everyone stay a little bit more patient and motivates people to come to work days. I appreciate you taking the time to listen.